The ancient marble courtroom quaked as Judge Richard Grant, a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, with a chiseled jaw and iron-gray hair, hammered his gavel against the bench. The sound sliced through a room thick with tension. Attorney Laura Mitchell, a resolute woman of 34 with auburn hair and sharp blue eyes, fixed her gaze on the defendant, a gaunt young man, Michael Hayes, no older than 23, his hands trembling on the stand. The prosecution and defense exchanged silent threats. A sudden movement at the back. Thomas Reed, a nervous, middle-aged witness with deep-set eyes, stood and confessed, "I took money, cash, to change my story. I'm sorry." Shock crashed over the crowd. The court stenographer's hands paused in midair. Laura Mitchell said, "Your Honor, this confession changes everything. We need time to examine the extent of corruption here." The defense lawyer, Charles Denton, fired back, "This is a spectacle, not justice." Tension wound tighter as Judge Grant narrowed his eyes, voice gravelly. "Order. This court will get to the truth." The room crackled with whispers and fear. Everyone realized nothing would ever be the same after today. As the shock of the confession reverberated, Laura Mitchell's thoughts churned. She remembered every detail of the case, the inexplicable delays, the shifting testimonies, the moments when the truth seemed just out of reach. She eyed Michael Hayes, recalling his desperate plea for justice, his insistence that he was framed. Judge Grant's voice cut through her reverie. "Hans, Mitchell, do you have anything further to present?" Laura squared her shoulders. "Yes, Your Honor. I request a recess to investigate this bribery claim. The integrity of this court is at stake." Charles Denton, voice cold, said, "Objection. This is theatrics, not law." Judge Grant silenced him with a glare. The gallery, a sea of tense faces, awaited the next move. Laura's determination crystallized. She would not let this moment slip into silence. Her mind raced. There was a bigger conspiracy, a rot that had spread through the very heart of justice. Every instinct told her that this trial was merely the tip of the iceberg. Judge Grant considered Laura's request, his weathered face unreadable. For a brief moment, the entire court seemed to hold its breath. Laura watched him, her jaw clenched, recalling the countless obstacles she had faced, from missing evidence to hostile witnesses. Charles Denton interjected, "This delay is unnecessary. The defense is ready to proceed." Judge Grant held up a hand. "Enough. The court will recess for 1 hour. Ms. Mitchell, I expect progress." The tension broke, murmurs swelling in the gallery. Laura stepped away from the table, mind racing, as Michael Hayes locked eyes with her, silent plea etched on his face. She nodded, a promise unsaid. Outside the courtroom, sunlight spilled through stained glass, painting Laura's determined silhouette as she marched toward the truth, ready to face whatever darkness waited. The courthouse corridors were a labyrinth of marble and whispers. Laura's heels clicked against the polished floor as she hurried toward the witness room. Her thoughts burned with suspicion. Who had bribed Thomas Reed? Was this just the beginning? She pressed her phone to her ear, calling her trusted investigator, Daniel Clark, a rugged man in his late 30s. "Daniel, I need you at the courthouse. We have a witness admitting to bribery. Find everything you can on Thomas Reed." Daniel replied, "On it, I'll dig deep." Laura glanced back, feeling eyes on her. She sensed danger. Shadows shifted in the hall, figures watching from behind frosted glass. Laura steeled herself. The stakes had just escalated. She would not be intimidated, no matter how deep the corruption ran. She would drag it into the light. Daniel Clark arrived within minutes, his footsteps echoing through the corridor. He met Laura outside the witness room, his presence steadying. "Found anything?" Laura asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet, but Reed's record is clean. On paper." Inside, Thomas Reed waited, hands trembling, eyes haunted. Laura entered, voice calm but unyielding. "Mr. Reed, who paid you? Tell the truth, and maybe you can save yourself." Reed hesitated, eyes darting. Daniel leaned against the wall, silent but formidable. The room felt small, the pressure mounting. Laura said, "You have one chance, Thomas, one chance to do the right thing." The air thrummed with fear, hope, and the electric sense that a secret was moments away from shattering the fragile illusion of justice. Inside the witness room, tension coiled tighter with every second. Laura Mitchell studied Thomas Reed, noting the nervous tremor in his hands and the way his eyes darted to every shadow. Daniel Clark leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Thomas, this is your moment. Tell us who paid you." Reed hesitated, sweat glistening on his brow. He stammered, "It was someone from inside. I don't know their name, but they gave me a black envelope and told me to keep quiet about the missing evidence." Laura's pulse raced. She pressed, "What did the envelope contain? Did you see their face?" Reed shook his head, fear etched into every line. "Only their shoes, expensive, polished, not the type a regular clerk wears." Laura exchanged a loaded glance with Daniel. The clues were thin, but they were enough to prove someone powerful was behind the scheme. Daniel said, "We'll get you protection, but you have to trust us." Reed nodded reluctantly, tears starting to form. Laura said, "Thank you, Thomas. This is a start." Stakes had just soared, and Laura could feel danger lurking just outside that door. Back in the main corridor, Laura and Daniel conferred in urgent whispers. The courthouse buzzed with rumors and flashes of media outside the glass doors. "And have you asked them all?" "We need to check surveillance," Daniel said. Laura nodded, eyes narrowed in determination. "Someone wealthy, connected. We need to know everyone who entered this building last night." Daniel moved quickly to the security office, his steps purposeful. Laura lingered, scanning the faces moving through the hall, every lawyer, every clerk a possible suspect. Suddenly, she noticed Charles Denton talking with a sharply dressed man she didn't recognize. Expensive suit, polished shoes, an aura of privilege. The exchange was brief, their body language guarded. Laura's instincts screamed. This man was a link. She snapped a discreet photo with her phone, committing every detail to memory. Justice was a puzzle, and Laura was determined to find every piece, no matter how dangerous. Inside the courthouse security office, Daniel Clark reviewed hours of grainy footage alongside a weary guard. The flickering screen revealed a figure, face obscured, but unmistakably wearing the same high-end shoes described by Thomas Reed. Daniel said, "There, freeze it." The guard complied, and Daniel studied the shoes, the tailored trousers, the purposeful stride. He jotted down the timestamp. "Send me this clip," Daniel instructed. The guard nodded, emailing it immediately. Meanwhile, Daniel's phone buzzed. Laura had sent him the photo she took. Comparing the images, he saw a chilling resemblance. "It's him. That's our guy," Daniel muttered. The mystery man had infiltrated the very heart of justice, and now they had a lead. Daniel felt the weight of the investigation shift. This was no ordinary case. The conspiracy ran deeper than anyone dared imagine. Outside, clouds gathered, casting long shadows over the courthouse steps as Laura exited for a breath of air. She scanned the plaza, eyes wary. The city felt colder, every stranger a possible threat. Her phone vibrated. Daniel's message, "We have the footage, matches your photo." Laura's chest tightened. She looked up as the unidentified man from earlier exited the courthouse, now alone, checking his watch. Laura followed at a distance, her steps soft on the wet pavement. He moved with the assurance of someone untouchable. She snapped another photo as he disappeared into a waiting black sedan. Laura scribbled the license plate on her notepad, mind racing with possibilities. This was more than a case. It was a test of her resolve, a challenge to see how far she'd go for justice. Her breath hung in the cold air, resolve hardening with every step. Back in her office, Laura studied her findings, the evidence arrayed like a battlefield across her desk. Daniel entered, face grim. "We've got a name," he said. "Adam Voss. Wealthy investor, deep political ties, no official business at the courthouse." Laura's heart pounded. She pulled up public records, seeing a web of shell companies and past scandals, all expertly buried. "We have motive, money, and now a face," she said. Daniel nodded. "But if he's this careful, we'll need to move fast and smart." Laura stared at Adam Voss's photograph, the cold arrogance in his eyes. "He underestimated us," she said. The stakes had never been higher. They were no longer just seeking the truth. They were fighting for the very soul of justice, and there was no turning back now. Rain lashed against the courthouse windows as Laura Mitchell stared at Adam Voss's face on her monitor. Her heart hammered with the weight of new evidence. Daniel Clark said, "He's clever. His name doesn't show up anywhere official, but he's everywhere just beneath the surface." Laura replied, "He's the link, the one tying these bribes to the court itself." She sifted through digital records, eyes scanning transfers, calls, and emails. Michael Hayes' fate now depended on finding the connection between Voss and Charles Denton. Suddenly, Laura's computer pinged, an encrypted file surfaced, sent anonymously. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's bait, or it's the break we need." Laura's voice was steady. "We don't have a choice. We need to know what's inside." She glanced at the wall clock. Every second felt stolen from the cause of justice. "If we can expose Voss, the entire operation collapses." Daniel nodded, silent but determined. Laura clicked to open the file, her hands steady. Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces in the dark office, as they prepared for whatever revelation waited. The encrypted file revealed a web of transactions, coded emails, wire transfers, and meeting notes. Every line pointed to Adam Voss, pulling strings behind closed doors. Laura's eyes narrowed, recognizing names from earlier testimony. Voss funded shell accounts, paid off clerks, and made sure evidence disappeared, she muttered. Daniel traced the data with his finger. "Denton's signature is all over these legal memos." Laura's anger simmered. Denton always played above suspicion. Now he's exposed. She printed the documents, sorting them into folders, each piece a nail in the conspiracy's coffin. Michael Hayes' future, and perhaps the fate of the entire court, depended on what they did next. Laura said, "I'll take this to Judge Grant. He needs to see the truth before it's too late." Daniel replied, "Be careful. If Voss realizes he's cornered, he'll lash out." Laura nodded, resolve burning behind her eyes, as she gathered the evidence and headed for the judge's chambers. Judge Grant's chambers were quiet, lined with dark wood shelves and legal tomes. Laura entered, her posture unflinching. Judge Grant, seated behind his massive desk, regarded her with weary suspicion. "This better be good, Miss Mitchell." Laura placed the folders before him, her voice measured. "Your Honor, this is evidence of corruption. Of a conspiracy involving Adam Voss and defense attorney Charles Denton." Judge Grant's expression shifted from skepticism to shock as he thumbed through the documents. "You're sure about this?" Laura said, "Every transfer, every name, it all leads back to them. They've manipulated this court and threatened the very foundation of justice." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of thunder outside. Grant looked up, eyes steely. "If this is true, we'll move immediately. But understand, the backlash will be enormous." Laura's answer was unwavering. "Justice is worth the risk." The judge nodded grimly, preparing for the coming storm. News traveled fast. The next morning, whispers of the coming confrontation rippled through the courthouse. Charles Denton arrived early, briefcase in hand, mask of composure barely hiding his unease. Outside the courtroom, reporters jostled for position, cameras flashing as Laura and Daniel strode past. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Michael Hayes sat at the defense table, hope flickering in his eyes. Laura leaned close, whispering, "It's not over. Stay strong." Judge Grant entered, gavel in hand, the room falling instantly silent. He fixed Denton with a cold gaze and said, "New evidence has come to light. The court will hear it before we proceed." Denton's face tightened, lips pressed thin. Laura placed the documents on the evidence table, her hands steady. The battle for justice was about to explode into public view. As the court session opened, Judge Grant's voice was sharp as steel. "We have uncovered evidence of grave misconduct," he announced. The gallery gasped. Laura presented the files, detailing each transfer, each betrayal. Denton tried to interject, but the judge silenced him. "Enough, Mr. Denton. The integrity of this court is not yours to manipulate." Denton's mask finally broke, beads of sweat forming at his temple. Laura continued, "We have traced every payment, every threat, back to Adam Voss." Murmurs erupted. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Judge Grant ordered, "Bailiff, detain Mr. Denton for questioning. We will recess until all parties are investigated." Denton was led away, face pale, while Laura and Daniel exchanged a look of grim triumph. The courtroom was left buzzing, the first cracks of justice splintering through years of corruption. The courthouse was engulfed in a somber stillness as news of Charles Denton's arrest spread. Laura Mitchell paced her office, her mind racing with possibilities and dangers. Daniel Clark entered, urgency etched on his rugged face. "The political pressure is mounting. Voss's allies are mobilizing." Laura stopped and said, "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but exposing Voss means dismantling an empire built on lies." She reviewed files, noticing a pattern of delayed justice, evidence disappearing, and threats silencing witnesses. Laura whispered, "This goes far beyond one case. It's systemic." Daniel nodded. "We have to protect Michael Hayes and ourselves." Laura clenched her fists. "We press forward. Justice doesn't wait for the powerful." The room felt charged with a quiet storm, and outside heavy clouds gathered, mirroring the tension inside. The next day, the courtroom buzzed with renewed anticipation. Michael Hayes sat at the defense table, hopeful but visibly exhausted. Laura approached him quietly, voice gentle. "We're close to the truth. Stay strong." The judge called the court to order. "Today, we hear testimony from a new witness," he announced, eyes scanning the room. A tall woman, Detective Rachel Morgan, entered, her calm demeanor contrasting the tense atmosphere. She laid out evidence recovered from recent raids, documents, recordings, and cash transfers linked to Voss's network. Laura watched as the courtroom absorbed the revelations. Denton's allies whispered fiercely. The gallery stirred with disbelief. Judge Grant's voice cut through the murmurs. "The court will ensure no stone is left unturned." Michael's gaze locked with Laura's, a silent vow of resilience amid the storm. Detective Morgan's testimony was meticulous, detailing the intricate web of corruption threading through the court. She explained how coded messages and hidden accounts enabled bribes and cover-ups. Laura listened closely, aware that every word could topple powerful figures. The defense lawyer for Adam Voss tried to undermine the testimony, but Judge Grant held firm, order in the court. Morgan continued, "We uncovered recordings of meetings where payments were arranged." Laura's heart pounded. The courtroom was no longer a place of procedure but a battlefield for truth. Michael whispered, "I want justice." Laura replied softly, "We will get it." Outside the courtroom, the storm broke, thunder rolling as if echoing the turmoil inside. As the day wore on, tensions escalated. Outside, reporters gathered, shouting questions. Inside, Charles Denton's former associates whispered rumors of intimidation and threats. Laura's phone buzzed. An anonymous tip, "Be careful. Voss's reach goes deeper than you know." She showed Daniel, who grimaced. "This isn't just a trial, it's a war." Laura nodded, steeling herself. She addressed Michael, "They'll try to scare you. Don't let them." The courtroom doors creaked open as Adam Voss appeared, his expression cold and unreadable. Gasps filled the room. Judge Grant's voice rang out, "All parties present, we proceed." Laura's gaze locked with Voss, fire tempered with steel. The battle for truth had reached its fiercest point. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as Adam Voss took the stand. His voice was measured, cool. "I deny all allegations," he said smoothly. Laura countered, "Mr. Voss, How do you explain the transfers traced directly to your accounts? Voss smiled thinly. Coincidence. Judge Grant interrupted. Your evasion won't save you. Laura's cross-examination was relentless, peeling back layers of deceit. Voss's composure cracked under pressure, sweat beading his temple. The courtroom watched, breathless. Laura thought, this is the moment justice either stands or falls. Outside, rain returned, pounding like a drumbeat of reckoning. Voss's empire trembled, and so did the fragile hope for truth. The courtroom crackled with tension as Laura Mitchell prepared to deliver her closing arguments. Her voice was firm but passionate, cutting through the heavy silence. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have uncovered is not just a case of one man's guilt. It is a network of deceit, a system designed to protect the powerful at the expense of justice. She paced slowly, eyes locking with each juror. Michael Hayes is a victim of corruption, framed to silence the truth. We have evidence, testimony, and undeniable proof linking Adam Voss and Charles Denton to this conspiracy. The defense team whispered furiously, but Laura pressed on. We must stand for justice, not convenience. We must ensure the court remains a beacon of truth. Judge Grant nodded solemnly, his gaze steady. The courtroom was hushed, waiting for the verdict that could change everything. The defense attorney rose, Charles Denton, his face pale but voice steady. Ladies and gentlemen, doubt remains. Evidence has been manipulated, witnesses coerced. Is this justice or vengeance masquerading as truth? He gestured toward Voss, who sat rigid and impassive. Denton's words stirred unease, but Laura remained unshaken. As Denton finished, murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Grant called for silence. The jury will now deliberate. Court is adjourned until a verdict is reached. The weight of waiting settled on everyone. Laura sat beside Michael Hayes, gripping his hand, whispering, "Hold on, justice is coming." Outside, the sky darkened, rain tapping steadily against the courthouse windows. The jury retreated to deliberate, hours stretching into tense silence. Laura and Daniel waited outside the courtroom, the air thick with anticipation. Daniel said quietly, "This is the moment it all comes down." Laura's thoughts raced through every piece of evidence, every testimony. She pictured Michael's hopeful face, the countless obstacles overcome. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Be careful who you trust." Laura's pulse quickened. Daniel caught her gaze. "We're almost there. Stay sharp." The courthouse corridors seemed colder, shadows lengthening. Time slowed as the future of justice hung in a fragile balance, poised between victory and ruin. The courtroom doors finally opened, and the jury filed in, faces unreadable. Judge Grant called the room to order. "Have you reached a verdict?" The person stood, voice steady but solemn. "We find the defendant, Michael Hayes, not guilty." Relief and shock swept the room. Michael's eyes welled with tears. Laura squeezed his hand tightly. Judge Grant's gaze lingered on Adam Voss, who sat stone-faced. Laura whispered, "Justice has prevailed today, but the fight is not over." The courtroom buzzed with a mix of celebration and disbelief. Outside, the storm had cleared, a pale sun casting long beams through the courthouse windows. The battle for truth had won a critical victory. As the courtroom emptied, Laura and Daniel reflected on the hard-won victory. "This is just the beginning," Daniel said quietly. Laura nodded. "The system is flawed, but people like us can make it right." Michael approached, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me." Laura smiled, voice soft but fierce. "We all stand for justice now." The courthouse doors closed behind them, the final echoes of footsteps fading into the quiet night. Outside, the city lights shimmered, promising new battles, new truths. For Laura, Daniel, and Michael, the fight for justice was far from over. It had only just begun. The morning after the verdict, Laura Mitchell sat at her cluttered desk, exhausted but resolute. Daniel Clark entered quietly, holding a stack of fresh subpoenas. "This is far from over," he said. Laura sighed, rubbing her temples. Voss's network is vast. We need to dismantle every piece. They planned a strategic strike, targeting key players still lurking in the shadows. Laura's phone rang. An anonymous tip warned of impending retaliation. They know we're coming, she said quietly. Daniel nodded grimly. We have to protect our witnesses and ourselves. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual indifferent hum, but inside Laura's office, a storm brewed, one that would shake the foundations of power and justice alike. Laura and Daniel visited the home of an intimidated court clerk, Samantha Fields, a woman in her late 20s, pale and guarded. Samantha's hands shook as she recounted her experiences of coercion and secrecy. They threaten my family, she whispered. Laura leaned in, voice soft but firm. We'll protect you. Your testimony can break this open. Samantha nodded hesitantly, hope flickering. Outside, the city's gray sky threatened rain. Laura's mind raced. Every new ally risked danger. This is a battle for every honest soul in the system, Daniel said. Laura's jaw tightened. We fight not just for Michael, but for everyone who's been silenced. The weight of responsibility settled heavy on their shoulders, yet their resolve only grew stronger. Back at the courthouse, Laura faced a storm of political pressure as Voss's powerful allies sought to derail the investigation. News outlets spun stories casting doubt on the prosecution's integrity. Laura stared down mounting threats, feeling isolated but unbroken. Daniel reminded her, they can't silence the truth forever. Laura responded, then we fight with every tool we have. Late into the night, she prepared documents and strategized with trusted allies, the glow of her computer screen reflecting fierce determination. Outside, thunder rolled, an echo of the battle raging within. She vowed to see this fight through, no matter the cost, because justice demanded no less. A surprise court hearing brought new revelations. A whistleblower, former Voss associate James Turner, testified under oath, exposing further corruption and detailing payments funneled through shell companies. Laura watched as Turner spoke with shaky conviction, naming names and dates. The courtroom absorbed every word, the scale of the scandal widening. Judge Grant acknowledged the courage it took to speak out, promising protection. Laura's heart soared but remained guarded. She knew the road ahead was still fraught with peril. After the hearing, she whispered to Daniel, this changes everything, but we can't let our guard down. Daniel nodded, eyes scanning the room. They'll come after us harder now. The fight for justice was escalating. As the hearing adjourned, Laura and Daniel stepped into the courthouse lobby. They shared a brief, knowing glance. Exhaustion mingled with steely determination. This is no longer just a trial, Laura said. It's a reckoning. Daniel added, we're not just fighting corruption, we're fighting for the soul of the court. Outside, the sun pierced through lingering clouds, casting sharp light on the steps where reporters waited. Laura's voice was steady as she addressed the press. Justice will prevail because we will not back down. The crowd absorbed her words, hope stirring among the weary. The path ahead was dangerous, but the spark of change had been lit, and no darkness could extinguish it. The final trial day dawned gray and heavy with anticipation. Laura Mitchell entered the courtroom, her steps steady despite the weight of the moment. Daniel Clark followed, his rugged face set with determination. Judge Grant sat solemnly at the bench, eyes scanning the room as reporters and spectators filled the seats. The atmosphere was electric, tension crackling like static. Laura glanced at Michael Hayes, whose hope now shone with a fragile strength. This is it, she whispered to Daniel. No turning back. The courtroom doors closed with a definitive thud, locking everyone inside for the battle's last act. As Judge Grant called the court to order, Laura felt the eyes of justice and corruption fixed squarely upon her. The moment to unveil the final truth had arrived. Laura began her final presentation, voice clear and resolute. We have exposed a network of betrayal, one that threatened not just Michael Hayes, but the very integrity of our justice system. She laid out the last pieces of evidence, recorded conversations, financial trails, and sworn confessions. The courtroom was wrapped, breath held tight. Adam Voss sat across the room, expression hardening as each fact was revealed. Laura's words echoed, "Justice is not a privilege for the powerful. It belongs to all." The defense tried one last desperate maneuver to discredit the evidence, but Judge Grant's sharp rebuke silenced them. "Let the truth speak." Laura's gaze locked with Voss's, a final challenge. The courtroom waited, poised on the edge of history. As the trial neared its climax, the courtroom doors swung open unexpectedly. A late-arriving witness, a middle-aged man named Paul Simmons, took the stand. His testimony shocked the room. "I was coerced to conceal evidence, but I can no longer stay silent." He produced documents proving a direct link between Voss and several high-ranking officials. Murmurs erupted, the scale of the corruption widening further. Laura felt a surge of relief, but also caution. This revelation might be the final blow, or it could provoke desperate counterattacks. Judge Grant nodded solemnly, promising protection. "The truth has found its voice today." Laura's resolve steeled further. The battle was far from over, but justice had gained ground. The defense flailed in desperation, trying to cast doubt and confusion. But Laura's methodical dismantling of their arguments left them exposed. Judge Grant's gavel fell sharply as he declared, "The evidence is overwhelming." The tension broke, a palpable shift rippling through the courtroom. Adam Voss's face betrayed defeat for the first time. Laura took a breath, knowing the fight was nearly won but still fragile. She whispered to Daniel, "Justice is fragile. It must be guarded fiercely." Outside, the sun pierced through lingering storm clouds, bathing the courthouse in a hopeful glow. The courtroom braced for the verdict that would echo far beyond these walls. The jury filed in, the courtroom holding its breath. The foreperson's voice was steady as they delivered the verdict. "We find the defendant, Michael Hayes, innocent of all charges." A wave of emotion surged, relief, joy, and a long-awaited justice. Michael's eyes brimmed with tears. Laura's lips curved in a quiet smile. Judge Grant rose, his voice solemn. "Let this be a reminder. Justice may be challenged, but it can never be silenced." Laura turned to Daniel, her voice low but resolute. "This is just the beginning." Outside, the courthouse stood bathed in golden light, a beacon for those who dared to stand for truth. The final echoes of the trial faded, but the fight for justice lived on, unbroken, unyielding, eternal.